Hello everyone, my name is Alessandro and this is the Temple of Surf, the podcast. We will give you full access to the best surfers, skaters, shapers, surfboard collectors, shop owners in the world. Discover with me their stories, the greatest successes, amazing behind the scenes and much more. Hello everyone and welcome to the 18th episode of the Temple of Surf, the podcast. Thank you for following us in this adventure. We hope you had as much fun as we do. Today with us, as part of the world's biggest surfboard collector series, Mark Buggs. Let's discover more about his important surfboard collection and much more. Hi Mark and welcome to the show. Where are you today?
I'm back in California from my 4-month quarantine in Mexico.
How did it go over there? Actually, like from the news that I hear on the TV, California is even worse than Mexico, right? In terms of
currently, yes, I would say California is a cesspool of COVID-19. But I think a lot of that could be exaggerated because they've increased testing, which that means an increase in positive cases, right? Whereas before they weren't testing so much as they are currently.
Yeah.
But Mexico was, and where I was located in southern Mexico, was probably the ideal spot to quarantine because it was that particular region is the land of right-hand points with basically no one there and solitude. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and 4 months is quite a relevant time. And I heard also there's been an earthquake in Mexico. Where you were there, where there was a...
Yeah, I was actually standing on the top of a sand dune looking over a beautiful right-hand point when it hit, and it was very eerie, but it was kind of it was just eerie, okay. Just watching the whole point shift back and forth, and then rocks started coming off the point. It was getting a little scary there for a moment, but overall not too bad. Just some broken, stuff off the shelves and that. But, I was down there with Tom Curran for 4 months.
Yeah, I heard about
You'll be seeing some, probably some pretty good, amazing footage out of Rip Curl in coming months of that.
I heard about. We follow your stories in Instagram, so there was at least a good companion of trip, right? And that was it was a good.
Yeah, we had some special times. It was pretty amazing.
But let's fast forward everybody to 2021 because between earthquake, COVID, unrest, wildfire in Australia, it's a very tough year. Anyway, today we're gonna talk about surfboard collection, and definitely you have one of the biggest and most qualitative surfboard collection that at least I know. The first question that I have for you is, what, in your opinion, the most important thing in surfing?
Probably the vehicles that we ride, right? The boards that we ride. It's just like with a NASCAR driver, right? The most important thing for NASCAR drivers typically is car he's driving in, right?
Yes or no, right? Depends on how you see it. In fact, that's the thing of my question is like you can say the surfboard. Other people they might say having fun. Or other people, they might say...
Yeah, I mean, it's a multiple, I think, answer on that. But, I think there's mainstream surfers, there's, like weekend warriors versus core surfers versus competitive surfers. But I think in general, you got to have, most people get the bug, get the bite to be inspired to surf. Surfing becomes very... do it for a while and you do get the bite. It becomes very therapeutic with the ocean and the surroundings and of course the people that you're with when surfing and stuff. So it becomes a very natural high and very therapeutic for you. But it's equally important if you're a core surfer is the equipment that you're riding,
Of course, definitely. It makes, as you said, then in that case, yes, it's like a NASCAR race, right? You need to have like a great surfboard, and you need to
and then the culture of surfing. The surf culture. I've been very blessed, to a certain degree, and being traveled the world and to various beautiful places on the corner of the globe, and just here in Hawaii and everywhere, the surf culture is very rich and deep. Has deep roots. And unfortunately, now with modern times and everything online and everything being produced, mass produced, and it's slowly, unfortunately, losing. I think it's the core culture of where it came from. Surf culture.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
I see what you mean. Like people maybe they surf more in Instagram that they surf than they surf in the reality, right? They're more like But
especially in board building. Okay. Back in the day, because this pod's more or less about collection of my surfboards, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, surfing was more about style, right, and lifestyle.
Yeah.
And board building, it was more of an art than it was like compared to today, where it's just mass producing and computerized pumping out boards, right? And it was an art form with all the resin, pin lines, and artwork, and foiling of fins and layups of fins, and the personalized aspect of with your shaper and your shop or wherever you got your boards built, and that is gone now almost.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of the surf culture back then. Was just building and just surf design progression during the 60s through the 80s and everything.
I think what you're saying is very relevant, because I was talking with Stu Kenson. Actually is in the 11th episode of the podcast, and basically he told me, like, us shapers from like let's say the old school that we are shaping since 40-50 years, if we know the surfer that we are shaping for, we can really make like a board that makes the difference. And not everybody can do that. We know because we shaped thousands of board for thousands of surfer, and for us it's super important to know the surfer ability.
Well, the feedback they give them,
exactly. So
in today's world, only a very small percentage have that relationship, right, with their surfers. Usually it's pro athletes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a very select few, right, who can actually work with their shaper, fine tune their equipment, right? But back in the day, in the 70s, you would be able to have that relationship typically with your shaper, because you would go down, pull a blank out, you would hand shape it right in front of you, have a couple of beers, smoke a doobie, and talk story and build out, a board, and typically build it around a fin that you would usually pull off the rack or fins.
Yeah.
And, you would ride it, come back, fine tune it 3 months later,
Yeah.
But,
and the glassing was on top.
I guess that's the modern times, Now, these kids are people that they just, click online and buy a board off the rack, and, it's shipped to their house,
Yeah, exactly. And I remember that, I don't remember with which shaper I talked, that he said we were shipping the surfboard, but the glassing, you had to go to another guy and pay the other guy. So you were paying the shaper, and then you were paying the glasser to make like the glassing on top of your surfboard.
Yeah, that's still very common today, right? Shapers are very kind of particular who they want glassing their boards, even in today in modern times. Not so much obviously in these big outfits like CI or Firewire. They have a big mass production line, but your smaller shapers who have their own shops, very particular in who they want glassing their boards, because that affects the performance of their boards as well, of the type of glass work that's, sanding and everything else that comes off the production line,
But anyway, everybody does his own business, even if it's a computer-shaped surfboard is another kind of public, is another kind of consumer than a classical end shaping, right? Let's talk about your first surfboard. Do you remember your first surfboard, and do you still have it?
Unfortunately, I still don't have it, but it was a small faces. I'm was born and raised here in California, Southern California. So my dad surfed. So he introduced me into surfing when I was probably, pretty young, 9, 10. I think he bought my first surfboard through like the penny saver. People who know or live in Southern Cal, they remember the penny saver. And I remember vividly, we drove up to this guy's house somewhere up in West LA, and he bought this board, and it was like a 1969 small faces Aztec diamond tail with like a Greeno tuna fin. And he drove me out the same day out to Malibu, and I remember vividly pulling up, and it's like pumping, solid 5 feet breaking through the pier. And he threw me out in the water there, and I remember getting pounded on the shore pounding. It's pretty classic, but I just remember vividly watching these waves peeling and guys streaking through the pier. And I got a couple of waves, but unfortunately that was many moons back, and who knows where that board is at this point. Small Faces was based out of Newport.
So let's hope that somebody
it was probably
listening...
it was like a needle. It was like probably, I don't know, 6 something, and probably under 19. Pretty classic.
If somebody has still that board, please to contact you, because I'm sure it's gonna be taking a big part of your collection, a big place in.
Oh yeah, well, I don't remember exactly the colors. Who knows? It's probably firewood by now, but. That was what year was that? When I was 10, it was 1975, 70, 78. But yeah, now that thing's probably firewood somewhere right now.
Let's talk about your collection. So how many surfboards you currently have today, and tell us a little bit more about that. It's a very qualitative collection as far as I know, but I want to hear more from you.
Well, my collection, when I got inspired to collect over, it's been quite a few years now, probably close to 15, 20 years. But, of course, what inspires you to collect is generally when you're a Grom, right, growing up. So growing up in the late 70s and early 80s as a Grom was kind of the period of what the core of my collection, 70s. But also I have quite a few 60s boards, and some wood, 50s, 40s, 50s, obviously 80s. So what inspired me to, my point of view, to collect was basically the progression of surfing, the shortboard evolution period, from like 69 through, 85 or 80. So, I have transitionals from 69, during when things were going from long to short, V-bottoms to, into the single fin, right, the Bonsers and that. And what really, in my point of view, again, for collecting with shapers, for example, you're talking about those shapers that have kind of went through that shortboard evolution period of late 60s to 80s, like Dick Brewer, Ben Ipa, a handful of others, and collecting a board from each era during that evolution, from, for example, in 69, I have a transitional IPA to, down railer, to, single fins, to his diamond rail, late 70s to the twin fins, So I have a board kind of that reflects the evolution of the shaping through that period of over 20 years, which kind of fascinates me. So you can see the progression of that shaper's experience through that, critical period of time for surfing and shaping and shortboards,
Yeah.
So approximately I have now, I don't know, at the peak, maybe close to 400 boards.
Wow.
Typically, I like to preserve what was to what is today. I'm not really buying and selling and flipping. I, swap things out, and upgrade, because I typically particular on the quality of the boards I collect. I like original stuff, not redos. I do have a few redos that have provenance on them, because I love boards with provenance, that have a history and a story behind them, right? It's all about the story behind the board.
Yeah.
imagine with a lot of these boards, all the stories and all the places and all the hands that they've been through and the waves they've ridden.
I guess when you are at the beginning of a collection, you buy a little bit of everything, right? Just for like maybe a name or something that you particularly like. And then when you start to have like an important collection like yours, I think definitely you need to go for provenance, as you said, and as well top quality, right?
Yeah, sure. When I first got into the board collecting space, I was kind of all over the place. That's normal with any collector typically. But then as you gain knowledge and you typically try to fine tune that collection, right? And yeah, I enjoy collecting boards that have obviously provenance, also boards that are like art boards, in my opinion, for airbrush boards, pro boards, boards to ride, because I like riding a lot of the stuff I collect.
Yeah.
But, there's certain categories, right, in board collecting, like, and typically it's either art and pro boards and just, high name board. I mean, I like Hawaiian stuff, everyone, like today what the hot button is today is 80s town and countries, bright colors, twin fins, it's hot today, the 80s stuff, 70s stuff is still hot, but, a little bit of everything.
And then you decided to create a website, right? Surfboardline.com, where you display your surfboard.
Yeah, and at some point here, I'll probably revisit that, meaning I haven't been keeping it active. Keep a lookout for that. I mean, at some point here, probably when I slow down, I'm going to start dabbling and keeping that more active and updated and blog. But the main purpose was to be interactive and build a community and to showcase my collection and to inspire others.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of collectors out there who have, very beautiful collections of surfboards who keep them tight to the vest and they don't want to showcase them. They're very protective, I guess, of what they collect, right?
Yeah.
Whereas myself, I like to inspire others and showcase and talk story, and again, the main thing is to inspire others. So that's what, made me start the surfboardline.com was to showcase my collection online, and it's still up there, but it's just only probably a third of my collection is on there currently.
Yeah, it's it's a transition between the website and Instagram, your page on Instagram, and then you can have maybe a overview of what is your collection at large is 400 boards.
Yeah, I keep my Instagram Bugs collection active and pretty current, but I kind of transitioned kind of over to my Instagram. But stay tuned. Hopefully, I'll revisit Surfboardline and
you must
and get that updated. Yeah, it's kind of a cool website, and people should check it out. Even though it hasn't been updated in a little while, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And
to see what's on there is a good resource.
Yeah, and as you said, you can be a collector that keep things for yourself. That is a choice, and then you can be a collector that share with the world and basically allow the world to use it as a reference, right? And to connect. Because through the surfboard,
that's important. There's again, it's important to preserve what was to what became what is today, right?
Exactly.
To showcase and inspire and to have as a reference, right? For people to use.
Exactly, and then
just hopefully not in the wrong way. What I mean by that is, I've seen a lot of cases over the last few years where people go on there and they take the airbrushes and color schemes off a lot of my boards and reproduce them today, which is, I think, a little not so good.
Yeah,
but
not good.
Hey, I guess that's part of the inspiration.
Yes, exactly. It's like in a modern painting, the artists they recreate Picasso's, and
right,
but
exactly.
But I was talking with Bird Huffman, from San Diego, the shop legendary shop owner, And he said that during this coronavirus confinement, he had the opportunity to classify all his surfboards that are in the shop, I think over 400 as well. And what he wants to do as well is to do a website with appropriate classification. And when I spoke with him, I said, like, that's amazing, because if we help people connecting the dot and go through the history of the world, because, like surfboard in a certain way are representing the history of a sport for sure, but also of the world, like all the years and the things that have been gone through, right? Certain surfboard and the Provenance and the people that surfed. So I think as a collectors, we have a responsibility as the one to share. And if we can inspire other collectors to share as well their collection, then I think it will be amazing. It will be just so interesting. But if you had to choose one board from your collection that is the most representative, or is the, let's say, has a very special meaning for you, which one would you choose? I know it's very difficult, but
I would probably, again, because there's different categories, right? Art boards. But I think meaningful, importance as far as the evolution of, like, the GoPro, right? And is probably the Steve Wilkins, Jerry Lopez pipeline board. Wow. That's all original, with the original housing, camera housing. That was in 1976, 75, 76, which was on the cover of Surfer magazine with a 10-page editorial and posters of, that the first view of behind the surfer in the tube looking out. Wow. That board that Jerry shaped, which is like an 8, I don't know if it's 8.6 or 8.4, thick, magenta overlay, yellow deck, red bolt, white bolt in the bottom, just, the classic pipeline diamond tail glass tone fin. Probably, top 5 for sure, because that was just the beginning of that era of being able to attach a camera to your board that, pulling in a consequential, barrel like pipeline, so that board is probably one of the top 5 for sure.
If you had to give an advice to a young collector, which kind of advice you would give him?
Well, just collect what inspires you,
It's always like that, right?
And, that's 1, 2, don't collect what's redos, collect originals. Just like with any space of collecting antiques or whatever, you want to collect the original patina, original pieces of vintage boards or vintage antiques, whatever you're buying. But
yeah, I was thinking about the restoration of surfboard. Again, it's like it's a true art, because certain boards, you bring in them to be restored, they come up like new, but they lost completely the patina, they lost completely their history, and they just become like a new surfboard that have nothing to do with the original shaper.
Yeah, that's very common for a lot of young collectors and people in general. Yeah. To do that, because they see this board in the garage that's maybe been sitting in the rafters for 25, 30 years, and it's burned, it's it's kind of ugly. But a lot of high-end collectors or core collectors like that, especially in Australia, which is interesting. A lot of boards that get sunburnt and suntanned, and the Aussies like that more so than the Western collectors out here in the States, because they feel that just adds patina to the age on a sunburnt board versus it keeping its bright white foam and colors, right? But the more burned out it is in Australia, the more they like it typically.
Exactly.
It's just important to try to keep it as original as possible. I mean, again, there's certain circumstances where, it's de-lammed and the glass is peeling off and it's a total destruction. That's one thing. And if it had provenance and it was maybe someone's personal board when they were a kid, but it's just torched, that's one thing. But as an investment, you want to keep it as original as possible, because it'll keep its value more so than if you were to tear the glass off and redo it. It looks like a brand new board, unless you're going to ride it. I do have some resto boards that I ride that I figured, well, eventually I'll just keep them in the sun and burn them up, and they'll look,
Yes.
old again.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like to buy a classic car and to put a new engine. If you buy a classic car, you know that you have to deal with the smell of oil coming from the carburetor, coming from the engine, and that's the beauty of it, right? You cannot make it new and put you can, but then you lose all the history of it. Let's talk about you as a surfer. What is your favorite board to use today?
And that really depends on conditions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I like riding everything, from, I have a 1980s twin fin locomotion longboard that I ride under, when it's 2 feet, right? To an 80s MR twin, to a single fin, to, mid-lengths, to modern surfboard. So it just really depends on surf conditions. But generally when it's kind of soft and I'm riding a variety of different equipment. But when there's some power and then, there starts being some juice, then I'll whip out obviously modern boards, and which, today on the modern side, riding, Channel Islands and Chris Borst, who's Taylor Knox's personal shaper. Chris Borst was actually working for CI for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But so Chris Borst and Channel Islands on the modern side, but on the vintage side, just, I have so many boards, and it's such a cross section of boards, to finless, to twins, to, eggs, to V-bottoms, it just depends. But like in Mexico with the point breaks, you can just whip out so many different types of toys. It just makes it fun,
Yeah.
And, but the 20 is kind of big on the list right now, the twin fins.
And when you were in Mexico, you end up buying some more boards, or you just...
Yeah, well, that's funny you mentioned that. I think when I was down there, because when you're in quarantine, right, everyone's sitting online trolling and surfing on the internet, right? So I think I acquired an 80s Town and Country twin out of the East Coast, a Lightning Bolt 80s twin out of the East Coast, full airbrush art board out of Laguna Canyon here in California, 70s. And then also, I don't know if you saw online, with Ben Ipa being, his health is failing a little bit. They did a Ben Ipa auction, charity auction to raise money for his medical bills that are mounting out of Hawaii. I don't know if did you see that online?
Yeah, I saw.
I participated in that, for a good cause for Ben, and the family. And I've been in the market for some IPA longboards and stand-up paddle boards that he's been doing. And, the big IPA, big boy stings.
Yes.
And so I acquired some of Ben's personal longboards and stand-up paddle boards through that auction, which I just received the last couple of days since I got home. And actually I took out a couple of the boards yesterday and today, and just to keep the stoke going for Ben and putting those boards back in the water, and stuff like that is inspires me.
Yeah, definitely. It was in Hawaii, and I think still people can donate to support Ben Ipa, and through Duke IPA, or through, I think there is a GoFund campaign still going on, so people can still definitely. Such a great...
Yeah, so that and Aquila IPA just made me a bitchin' ass a twin. If you look at his Instagram, he with an 80s spray. So I'm stoked. I just got that as well, and kind of fired up to get on that from Aquila.
So I'm very happy that you got them. So for sure, you will preserve the history of those boards that are actually very rare and beautiful. We're gonna finish our interview with a short Q&A session. So please answer the first thing that comes up to your mind. Okay? The best surfboard that you ever ridden. I know you will tell me depends on which kind of surfboard. I got that. Now I got that. But the one that you remember, like no matter what, it was a twin fin shaped by so and so, or like.
Well, Yeah, see, are you asking from the vintage collective space or modern? Either or.
Let's go for vintage.
Vintage, I would say probably an IPA 80s twin under the TNC logo.
Your favorite shaper?
Favorite shaper? A vintage shaper that's still, well, again, on the vintage side, collective side, I would say, definitely have to say probably IPA at this point, just because he's been so fresh in my mind lately and all that. And alongside, I would say IPA with the Sting and the Twin, and that is the Hawaiian lineage, and just, I mean, there's so many of them. Not to
of course
disrespect the other guys like Brewer, Lopez, and Al Chapman, and all these guys. Even out of Australia, there's so many. But I guess Ben is in a lot of people's thoughts now. But I would say, and just the fact that I've written some just killer 80s twins under IPA.
Okay. Let's go from vintage to modern days. In your opinion, the most promising shaper, like a young talent.
Currently?
Yeah, currently.
Well, and this is just domestically, I guess. There's so many great shapers out of Australia, but I would say domestically here, what comes to mind would be Matt Biolis and Paisel. Obviously, the relationship that John has had with Paisel out of Hawaii and the performance level. And again, it comes back to that athlete or surfer and shaper relationship of really fine-tuning his equipment and tuning it out to where he's put together an amazing board models that work, and again, of all kinds of conditions, out of Hawaii. And then Matt Biolis is very talented out of San Clemente, the boards that I've written, and those two just come to mind like today that are hot. That I'm sure there's a number of other ones, but who have been entrenched and over the last 15 or good like at least 10 years.
I'm trying to have Matt on the show, and maybe soon. So maybe.
Yeah,
soon.
Matt. Yeah, he's a good dude. I can always try to help connect you with him. He likes to talk. He's very knowledgeable. He's a good dude. Yeah, he's interesting too on the snowboard side. He's got the snowboard bite. So he, with the Mayhem snowboards and that, I was able to pick one up, and I've yet to test it, but hopefully this season.
Hopefully. Like a lot of people, when I ask the most promising shaper today, they answer Ryan Birch.
Well, okay. Well, see, there's so much different categories of
but consistently.
Okay? I'm talking on the performance side, high performance side, Biolis, Paisel, they here domestically. When we're talking the retro side, the hipster side, I call it, the Tyler Warrens, Alex Knows, that kind of generation that's happening. Sure, there's Ryan Birch, most definitely, and a bunch of other guys,
No, but I like
that
actually
are very talented, that are pumping out these retro boards, even like the likes of Tyler Warren,
of course.
But on that level, sure, on the retro type boards, most definitely.
Yeah. No, I was impressed because consistently everybody, especially the shapers, they say his name. Like nobody said anybody else. So I like your reply, and I'm sure I agree with you. Matt is a great shaper. Your favorite surf spot?
Well, currently at my age, I was entrenched down in the southern Mexico region, which point breaks and more point breaks. The sand bottoms is probably my favorite at this point. And for a lot of other people, sand right-hand points are a fantasy to a lot of people, including still myself.
Okay.
I'm not going to name spots particularly, but the region.
The region, okay.
Keeps me going and inspired to.
That's great.
To surf,
Let's go back to vintage. Your favorite surfer?
Again, there's probably so many, but vintage. Wow. I mean, obviously Jerry Lopez during that whole style getting barreled, but that's a tough one. That's Larry Burlman. Obviously, if we're talking vintage of the period of that shortboard evolution, we got to start off with Jerry pulling in and getting barrel with style, and then followed up with performance with Larry Burlman, Buttons, that crew, Mark Liddell. But everyone's favorite would have to be Burlman and Buttons. Just characters to the Burlman carve. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Then leading to to the next generation like Tom Curran, and then to the momentum generation of the Kelly Slaters, the Dorians, the Kalani Robb, and so on, right? Yeah. But that would probably be it in a nutshell. But vintage would have to be Jerry to then Larry to Buttons, and that was pretty.
I agree with you. And the last question is a little bit unusual. We ask to everybody, has nothing to do with surf, your best relationship advice.
Stay stoked and inspired, Yeah.
That's good for a relationship, right?
Stay stoked and inspired to get in the water, and at the same time to try to preserve, again, what was to what is today. And then on the other side, the environmental side of, trying to protect the places where we served and to keep them preserved. And, half the battle, especially during these times that we're going through, is just staying positive and stoked and to get in the water and being happy.
Yeah, definitely. Being happy is I think a solution for a lot of problems in today's world. A positive attitude. Let's put it positive feeling. Thanks a lot for being with me on the show today, and I look forward to talk to you very soon. Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.templeofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!